Good morning, everyone. My name is Alec Foster. It's a pleasure to be speaking to you all, even if it is only virtually. Uh, I work for the Radiata Pine Breeding Company, and I'm going to be giving you a presentation today, providing a bit of a background to the RPBC, the value that we create, and the exciting research that we're currently doing and planning on doing in future. So the RPBC supports the forestry sector by improving the genetics of the material that's planted. The better material planted, the better the commercial outcomes for forest growers. It's really no different to any other industry or sector. If you use better ingredients, better feedstocks, you're likely to end up with a better product, a better end outcome. So this is really what RPBC focuses upon. Now, the RPBC and its predecessor, the Radiata Pine Breeding Cooperative, have a long history of improving the germplasm within New Zealand, and as such, we own most of the IP. Our core business is breeding, as the name suggests, which in essence is targeted mating and characterizing, measuring those traits of interest. So we have large trials across New Zealand, across multiple environments, helping separate what is the nature and nurture. Do we have a tall tree because it has superior genetics, or do we have a tall tree because of the environment that it's grown within? And these experiments and trials help us determine what are the best offspring and what are the best candidates for future mating. But we've also got to be conscious of many of the things that are being spoken about in this conference. Things like climate change, pests and disease, species diversity. And recently RPBC has updated its vision to include the risks and challenges as we move forward as an industry ahead. Now, RPBC as a company runs on a not-for-profit basis. Our income comes from both the shareholder levy and royalties, and this amounts to approximately $3 million per year. And this income goes straight into our breeding and research and development. We have nearly 200 trials across New Zealand and Australia with thousands of genotypes. And that is an immense amount of data, a wealth of information, helping us understand various trees under different environments. And most of this work wouldn't be possible without our shareholders. We've got 16 shareholders, and they represent approximately 60% of the Pioneers estate in New Zealand, 30% in Australia. Many of our trials are held on their estates, which provide us the invaluable information that we use for our breeding processes. Our team is only small. We've only got 6 employees. Mark, he's a tree improvement manager, so he's our breeder, so he's the brains behind a lot of our operations, selecting the best candidates, the best trees for distribution, the best trees for future breeding. Ben, he's the man in the field. He provides a lot of our on-the-ground work, helping establish the trials, helping us measure the trials. My role is associated with identifying new R&D, with commercial outcomes, helping understand how we can leverage a lot of our knowledge that's been built up over generations. I'm also have an important role working with Scion, helping operationalize the SNP chip and the genomics technology. We also have a fantastic support team, Belinda, Kelly and Kevin, and without them we won't be able to do much of the work that we do. Now, because we're only a small team, we need to rely on outsourcing most of our work, and it would be impossible to work without our great collaborators. We have a close relationship with Scion, trying to explore the next generation of R&D and blue sky research that needs to be performed. We have multiple teams helping us utilize the genetics, companies which help in terms of our general day-to-day operations and working in the field, consultants with international expertise, and we've also got 2 great PhD students at the University of Canterbury. Now, RPBC's breeding objective is really the traits that we try and prioritize. So this is our relative weighting to some of the most important aspects. So RPBC prioritizes volume because this has the greatest impact on value for the industry. But we're also very conscious of wood quality traits such as density and modulus of elasticity. And we measure trees at approximately 10 meters height, which is an 8 to 10 year kind of age range. And this gives us a good prediction of what's going to be the characteristics the trait is, the tree is at harvest age. Now, the main thing that most of the industry wonders is what is the value of RPBC and the germplasm that we provide. I really quite like this graph. It gives an indication of the distribution of the increase in value per hectare. So this is a distribution from 1997 onwards, so over 76,000 measurements. RPBC is continuing trying to push this distribution curve to the right, and in 2020 those included in our crossing program had an MPV per hectare increase of $2,218. So that gives you an indication of the value of the genetics that RPBC is generating, and also the historic value that has been generated over time. However, moving forward, RPBC recognises that we need to ensure the uptake of our material, ensure that our research is translated into actual commercial outcomes. So we're undertaking a number of initiatives over this next year or two to help make this a reality. The first thing is we're going to be engaging the industry far more face-to-face interaction. We're going to be doing research about understanding what the industry requires and needs. This will help us inform our breeding objective and tailor it better to the needs for 2030, 2040, 2050, thinking about the future and how this changes. We're also developing a new support tool to help germplasm deployment, so helping provide transparency to our different seed lots and the various benefits or negatives associated with each. We're also going to be improving our communication. One of these ways is translating from our GF system to EBVs, and this will help articulate the value that we bring. The last thing, and really quite important, is we're going to be introducing a second breeding orchard. This second breeding orchard will help increase the breeding intensity, and it will also provide a mechanism for us to use genetic selection using our SNP chip. We've also got to realise the value from our SNP chip. Now, I'm sure over the last 8 years, you've all heard about the SNP chip that's been developed between RPBC and Siren, and it's fantastic. We have done great work developing this R&D tool. However, the next stage is actually translating it into application, realising the value from the SNP chip. So this involves RPBC developing a robust pipeline, automating the process and bringing down the cost, making sure that we can actually use it on a day-to-day basis for genomic selection. And next year, RPBC are planning to use genomic selection for the first time. And this will cut down our breeding cycle from approximately 17 years closer to 10. It's also going to be useful for pedigree verification, identifying at a gene level, a genome level, what tree we actually have, rather than what we believe we have. Once we've got this, there's also an immense amount of work that needs to be done, and we're starting to initiate this work with science today in terms of understanding genome-wide association studies. So at the moment, the SNP chip and the SNP data is effectively a black box. We want to translate that into knowledge, and this knowledge will help inform genetic engineering and also the genotype by environment. Now, the hot topic moving forward is climate change. RPBC simply can't be performing breeding in isolation of the changes in the environment in terms of climate change, in terms of pests and disease. And RPBC is increasingly aware of the need to adapt. We're increasing our germplasm diversity, introducing hybrids, other softwoods, working with Tree Breeding Australia. We've got a PhD student just starting at the University of Canterbury looking at red needlecast, and we've also been working with Jenny Aitken identifying endophytes associated with Pinus radiata. All of these we hope will mitigate a lot of the risks that we see on the horizon. I'd like to acknowledge multiple people, and there's too many to name them individually. I'd like to thank FGR for arranging this conference and for much of the work that they do in this area. There's considerable overlap with what FGR do and what RPBC needs to be looking at from a breeding perspective. Mark and Ben, these are the guys who are responsible for generating and measuring a lot of the material that goes out into the sector. So I'd like to really thank those guys. Our research partners and contractors, again, far too many to mention, but I'd like to single out Scion. Our close relationship is really important for RPBC and the next generation of research that we need to be performing. I'd also like to thank our shareholders and royalty payers. It is the income that we receive from this which helps us do the research that we perform. So thank you, everyone. Thank you. Bye-bye.